Is the Suzuki GS500 a good motorcycle, especially for a value, budget-oriented, smaller sport bike? Yes, but I think there's an even better option out there, so stick around a few minutes and let me explain it to you. What's up everyone? It's Alex. Today's video comes from a viewer question from Eric. Eric is a big time supporter of the channel and a great viewer, so Eric, huge shout out to you, buddy. Eric basically just asked, what do I think about the GS500? Because Eric's been looking for a great bike on a budget, trying to make it work, right? Real quick while I'm thinking about it, if you dig the video, if you're new here, like, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff, because it tells me what kind of content you guys like so I can keep making that for you guys. So the Suzuki GS500, what do we have here? For the Suzuki GS500, you have a smaller displacement, twin-cylinder sport bike that's been made in a naked version, like a standard naked sport bike type of version, and was made in a faired version, partially faired version for a little while. But for most of the world, late 80s to mid to late 2000s range for the GS500, right? So available for a long time. For most of that time period, it was a naked sport bike. It was kind of more like a smaller SV650 style of motorcycle, right? 480 something cc, so just under 500 cc, parallel twin cylinder engine, air cooled, producing around 40 horsepower to the rear wheel. They say 50 crank, but more like around 40 horsepower to the rear wheel. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 pounds of torque, which really neither of those things matters so much as its actual usability and value in the market. Utilized a 6-speed transmission, and as you would expect, a chain final drive. The naked version had the very basic kind of naked sport bike styling you would expect from a late 80s to early 90s bike, you know, round headlight, that very typical tail section, you know, it looked like a late 80s to early 90s naked sport bike. The faired version, they basically just took like what I would call a quarter or half fairing and bolted onto the front of the thing. The GS500 was, for all intents and purposes, for a long time, basically Suzuki's entry into the sport bike world, especially if you were in the North American market where we didn't get the GSXR 250s and stuff for a really long time. It was always aimed to be kind of a value for the money style of a motorcycle, so it was never designed to be an ultra fancy, ultra powerful, any of that kind of stuff. It always, to me, felt like kind of underwhelming in the power department, underwhelming in the suspension, underwhelming in handling, kind of underwhelming in everything, but it was always a good motorcycle for the money. You know, you wouldn't really want to buy one brand new, but it was a really good motorcycle to get if you can get your hands on one for, you know, less than $1,000 or something used, okay? In the course of me dealing with GS500s, I have seen quite a few problems out of them, particularly in the carburetor department. I've seen some electronic issues out of them. I've seen some overheating issues out of them. However, most of that stuff I usually attribute actually to owner neglect. Because most of the time when I've seen these bikes used and I've dealt with them, they have been used and abused and neglected from the types of buyers that tended to buy GS500s. I bet if you had a GS500 that was actually owned by a responsible human being that took care of their motorcycle, it probably is just fine. It's probably a very nice bike and it probably holds up very well, as you would expect from most Suzuki motorcycles. But I've dealt with a lot of them that were neglected, and I will say it's not a motorcycle that really holds up very well to abuse and neglect. It's a kind of motorcycle I think you really have to actually take care of, whereas there's a lot of bikes out there that you can just abuse and they kind of hold up well. The GS500 seems to not hold up very well to abuse. So overall, the GS500, for what it is and for the price you can usually find them at, is a perfectly good motorcycle. You know, if that's the best motorcycle that you can find for $800 to $1,000 in nice running condition, it is plenty of motorcycle for that kind of money, and that's the good news about them is you can usually find them very cheap on the used market. However, here's what I would say about the GS500. If you're looking at something like a GS500 in that kind of size range and in that price range, I think you're much better served going with a motorcycle that competed directly with it, that I owned personally, that I like a lot more, and I think is a better bang for your buck, and that is the Kawasaki Ninja 500. So the Ninja 500 came out in the late 80s as well and was produced and manufactured all the way up to somewhere around 2009, at least for the North American market. Basically unchanged through that entire range except for just a very slight tweak in the late 90s. With the Ninja 500 you had a just under 500cc, also parallel twin, this time water-cooled engine, producing more like 50 horsepower, real numbers. Also made it up to a 6-speed transmission and a chain final drive. But overall, it always felt like the Ninja 500 was a little bit more powerful, a little bit better performance to it, handled a little bit better. Overall, the entire motorcycle, to me anyway, personal opinion, always felt a little bit more quality and a little bit more competent and just a little bit better performance. I know it's weird to talk about performance when we're talking about 500cc economy type smaller sport bikes like that, but the Ninja 500 always felt to me like it handled a little better, a little bit more power, just overall performed a little better, and felt a little bit more solid and better to me personally. And also, in my experience, the Ninja 500s tend to hold up better to the abuse and neglect. Whereas a GS500, if it got abused and neglected for a while, it seemed to really take it hard. A Ninja 500, I've seen a lot of Ninja 500s that have been absolutely beat to hell and back, and are still just cranking right along. And I beat mine to hell and back, and it just cranked along until I traded it for a Buell. So Eric, yes, I think the GS500 is a very, very, very good option in a really, really cheap used sport bike. There's no way I would ever in a million years pay more than $1,000 for a GS500. Even a really nice one, $1,000 is the ceiling to me on a GS500. And I know the used market is a little bit tricky, but if you can find one, I think a Ninja 500 is an even better option in that same price point category, in that same kind of size range. You know, in a smaller sport bike that's easy to get into, but is absolutely plenty capable. My Ninja 500 would do like 130 miles an hour, so it's plenty fast enough, really. It's not super fancy, but it gets the job done. And I think if you can find one, a Ninja 500 is objectively a better option than a GS500. But if you can't find one, the GS500 was made for a really long time, has a big cult following, and is a very, very good motorcycle for the money, for what you usually pay for one. Just keep in mind, you will be dealing with carburetors, you will be dealing with some of those like a little bit more old school things, but good motorcycle for the money. If you take care of it, it'll probably run forever. Eric, I hope that helped. I hope that was entertaining for everybody else. As always, have a great day, ride safe. I'm Alex, peace.